The first check that I got off of music, it was like probably $50. And I remember I needed it to get to the show that I had that weekend. I thought that was like a bad thing. And then I came across something that was saying how you have ever filled up your gas tank from something you love doing, you're ahead of 99% of society.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, the first time I ever got paid for my music, filled up my gas tank. Kind of that perspective made me realize that I am about 100 times past where 13-year-old Max would have been like, you made it, dude.
You're listening to the NEI Pioneer Podcast. In this podcast, we love telling the authentic stories of the people in our region. For those of you who are watching, you might notice that I'm not filming this in our normal podcast studio. And that's because we're in the middle of filming our 2025 Pioneer video series, which will showcase this year's Pioneer nominees. If you're curious in learning more about our Pioneer Awards event, be sure to check out pioneerstartshere.com. Now back to today's episode. Maxwell Krueger joins us on today's show as the founder of Playbook Creative Agency. Playbook Creative is a marketing agency that was born right here in Fort Wayne. Maxwell shares his journey and how it shaped him into who he is today. He also shares the hurdles and challenges that he faced along the way of chasing his dreams. If you want to hear more authentic stories like this one from our region, be sure to like, subscribe, and follow us. Now, let's jump into today's episode.
Welcome back to the show. I'm Jonathan Sackett. I'm hosting today. And we've got a really special guest here today with Maxwell Krueger. And I'm going to have to read this because you are the founder, creative director, and content creator at Playbook Creative Agency.
Yes, that's my company.
Okay, I was going to say, can we add more titles into this? Because
man,
you're kind of the do-it-all guy.
I feel like we'd run up to a character limit at that point. It's like I try to get creative with it.
Well, okay, so, you and I have a lot of synergy, and I just met you just now, so we've got a lot to get into because if you don't mind, I'd like to start with the music aspect. So you were in the music industry for a while, and it sounds like both as an artist and a promoter. Is that right?
Yeah, so I was doing a lot of stuff. So, man, I guess I could take it back to the very beginning of when I kind of found music. I just was putting music out on the internet, right? Like I was just kind of like every other kid finding GarageBand and stuff like that. Being from the Midwest, I had to get creative on how to get my stuff out there. I had to really utilize the internet, really try to utilize different like chat rooms and stuff like that. And that kind of just naturally went into me, marketing. And, I think the best way to, without telling a 2-day story is like, I was working as a musician for the longest time, and then I kind of like started to realize I had a little bit of a skill for like helping my friends out, right? Like get out to other eyes, right? And like it really clicked for me when I started surrounding myself around people who were kind of like doing more in the music industry than myself, and then they were needing help like with some of their marketing, promoting stuff like that. And when I was able to remove, it from myself, the results were just kind of crazy. So yeah, I guess like I never really saw myself as like a promoter or anyone doing marketing in music also, because I was helping friends out or helping peers out, making sure that we could get the most exposure on whatever project we were doing. But then, kind of drawing things back, kind of had my foot in both sides of the industry.
Because I came out of Minneapolis.
Okay.
So I think it's promotions. Music was in my DNA a little bit. So I started with drums, and then I started getting into more guitars and stuff. That certainly isn't my forte by any means, but I've always found one of my guiding principles has always been owning sight, sound, and soul. Right. And so that started with music, of course, but it was something that I applied into marketing and advertising. And it worked because for me, that was the catalyst. If you can, I've always found that if you can find a sound or an effect or something that resonates with the audience, it'll do nothing but magnify what you're already trying to accomplish.
Exactly.
And that's the way I've always looked at it. I'm interested in how you're looking at it, because I find it's hand in glove, sound with whatever the marketing initiative it is. But I've also found that it can trip you up.
They really do go hand in hand. The reason why people get into music, or the reason, I think of myself as a young kid, music hit me a certain way because of what it made me feel.
Yeah, that's right.
Then I started writing, and then I was like, okay. Then I started putting, the writings to music, and I was like, wow, this not only makes me feel, but someone just told me that they also feel what I was feeling once they heard it, So that kind of clicked pretty early on. And then now, going even to the marketing side of it, it's like when you're trying to get exposure on something, you're trying to bring awareness to something, like you said, it's about the feeling, and they really do go hand in glove, because people forget, like, marketing is really everywhere we look about anything. It's like, I don't know, you have the hat on. It's like we have shirts on. We have, like, any brand you see, anything, it's all over the place. And we put identity to it depending on where it hits us, right? Like,
right.
I don't know, not to go off on too much of a tangent, but I like to think of like generic brands, right? Pull up to the house, to your little cousin's house with a box of goldfish, they're gonna be excited. But pull up to their house with like some yellow sharks or something, they're like, what? It's the same exact thing. It's just branded a little bit different.
Yeah, that's right.
But the goldfish had the really high budget, amazing commercial that made that little kid feel supported.
That's right.
And but not the other one.
Well, and that's why when you look at the way the shelves are stocked, we used to do all the. I've been at this a while, so we did all the Kellogg cereals, for example.
Okay, yeah.
And they're always at eyesight, a line of sight for a child, right? That's where they know where to put them. You go to the bottom shelf, and it's the knockoff Fruit Loops and stuff. The kids don't want those.
They don't want it.
Eddie Murphy talked about that once with his mom, that he wanted a Big Mac, and instead she made him a Big Mac at home, and he's like, that's totally not the same thing.
It's like, we got it at home. It's not the same though, Mom.
Well, so now you were born and raised here, right?
Yeah, I was actually born in St. Joe, Michigan, so just a couple hours up, right on Lake Michigan, and then I moved here when I was 7 and grew up here until I graduated high school.
And then you moved to Austin? Is that right?
Did, yep, Austin, Texas. That was where I moved, I think, in 2015.
First of all, what made you leave here, and second of all, what made you go there?
Like I said, I was kind of just that kid that was making music, and I use the word luck. Obviously, I feel like this part of my life is like luck is. It's deeper than just something randomly happening, right? But hopefully. Hopefully, yeah. I was just putting music out and started to get a little bit of a following, kind of on like SoundCloud and YouTube and stuff like that, and just locally too. People, they didn't really. I used to say that they didn't support me, but it's not that they didn't support me. It's that coming from Fort Wayne, there wasn't a ton to look at as far as like entertainers coming from here. Right. There were few.
Who paved the way, right?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly remember having to look, and I would have to like latch on to people I learned were from Indianapolis or something, and I would have to really. It was difficult on that side of it, But the one thing that was nice though was that I was never trying to be something I wasn't. So I wasn't, making I wasn't like making music that people in real life would see and be like, that's not the life you're living. Like, I was literally just making alternative hip hop music that was reflecting my feelings in my life. So people either like thought it was silly or they kind of just wrote it off. And all that to say that I knew that I wanted to do more with music because I already had done more than what even made sense. Like the fact that I had a following, I had people supporting me, asking me for new music all the time. I was like, okay, I was not a good kid in school, or I wasn't academically like too advanced in school. I was just not, it didn't click for me. I ended up going to like community college for a little bit, and I remember feeling like at that point I felt like really conflicted because I was like, what am I doing in college? Like, and especially I should also add too, we can probably get more into this too, but a lot of what shaped this was my dad passed away a week before my senior year of high school. So that was crazy. Like, I don't even really remember much of my senior year, as I'm able to reflect it now.
Yeah. If you don't mind me asking, was it sudden?
Yeah, so my dad was an addict. He was alcoholic, and he battled with that for a while. Like, for my entire life, he battled with it, but he battled with it openly, like to where we knew about it. It was something he was trying to correct, like the last few years of my life. And in the point of it being sudden and abrupt, yeah, we did not expect that at that point. But it was something that. Life is life. That's the one promised thing in life is the expiration of it.
Yeah, right.
I kind of stopped caring about the little things and like little failure. Like, I no longer felt like I could fail.
Yeah.
Not in a cockiness type of way or egotistical type of way, but it was a way of like, I literally don't think I could feel worse than what I felt, because before that I had never lost anyone in my family. I still to this day have both my grandparents on both sides. Super blessed. It kind of removed like this like the risk factor kind of. It was
Yeah.
like, I was like, okay, let's just see what
That's
happens.
really an interesting way to look at it, because I would think, I think you're making me think back to my dad. My dad's dad was an alcoholic, really bad. And, with my dad, his situation, when you come out of that, you either come out the other side better or worse. And I think there's a very small gray area between the two.
Mm-hmm.
So my dad became super dad because his dad wasn't great. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So all of my sporting events and everything, he was always in the stands. But I think with my dad's situation, it made him better. And if we all go out for a nice dinner, he might maybe have a glass of wine
Mm-hmm.
or maybe a Bloody Mary or something, but that's it. And I think that was ingrained into him. And I know the thing that really bothered him was my dad was a sports guy too. And in high school back in the 50s when he was growing up, they would announce him with his sponsor, while all the other guys on the team, it was with their dad. And I think that just really, I know that really bothered him.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that it's those things that make us.
Definitely.
If you don't get knocked in the sand a couple times, you don't know how to get back up.
You don't. And I try to live my life by like that philosophy, right? Like I really like what you said about it either makes us or kind of breaks us. Like that's kind of how I took it. And yeah, that conversation can be very difficult, right? Because I had to, the perspective that you're kind of touching on that I'm giving is kind of a perspective that I had to work on, because there was a while where, we've all heard the term of kind of like fake positivity, right?
Right.
Like, and I was so kind of like trying to be optimistic that almost was like, or what's it called? Toxic positivity. There we go. It was like almost like this toxic optimism, because it's like,
We used to call that customer service positivity.
yeah, right.
It's fake.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's fake. But what I had realized was I'm like, okay, it's not fake, but my approach is not correct, right? Because it's like, I think the analogy I saw when I started like kind of learning about this concept was, if someone says something bad to you and they're like, oh, well, it could always be worse. It's like, no, it literally could always be worse. That's not a very comforting thing to say to somebody, right?
Yeah,
Like,
well, okay, but see, that goes hand. This is one of my peeves. Did you ever tell somebody? My mom just had some very major health challenges, and as soon as you tell some people those health challenges, they come to you with, "Oh yeah, well, my mom." That's the knee-jerk reaction of people.
we need each other right now. People are so broken. No one feels like we're hearing anybody. And I feel like, I'm not even trying to get all philosophical and psychological on that, but like, I feel like a lot of that comes from, we need to like listen to each other, you
Right.
know? And because like, I pay attention to that, and I try not to psychoanalyze all of my conversations, but I really pay attention to that, because been things I've had to really, really work on to maintain being a good listener and making sure that I'm like, there's times when I don't need to speak. There's times like right now, this is a time when I get to speak, right? But there's other times I need to be a listener. Like I need to fully be able to be there for what the situation is calling for.
I've always looked at it on a continuum, that there's hearing, there's listening, and there's understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that comes from a place where, if, like I said earlier, unless you get dinged, unless you get banged around a couple times, you don't really know how to appreciate somebody else's way of thinking. And it's funny, we were just talking about this in a meeting a couple weeks ago. If you look back at old videos on YouTube, like Dick Cavett show or things from the 70s, people would debate without storming off and debate without getting personal. And you could hear opposing sides and opposing views. I don't know why we've strayed from that so much as a culture, where it's got to be immediate, everything from immediate gratification all the way to almost penalizing the person for a differing point of view or perspective.
Yeah.
And I think just as a society and as a culture and as a musician and as a marketer, I think that if you aren't good at listening to people or understanding the viewpoint, you can't establish a brand. You cannot establish a brand unless you know what it stands for.
Yep.
That's square one.
The NEI Pioneer Podcast seems like the perfect place to plug our Pioneer Awards event. If you don't know, each year we host an awards event to celebrate our region's pioneers. Just like our podcast, this event aims to showcase and share the authentic stories of the people in this region. Now, this is a community-involved event. We had open nominations in the fall, and now we have our category finalists. This spring, we will have community voting, which is where you can get involved to vote on our category winners. Then we'll be followed by the event where we will announce the 2025 Pioneer of the Year. If you're in the Northeast Indiana region, we'll encourage you to go to pioneerstartshere.com to learn more about this event and how you can get involved. Again, that's pioneerstartshere.com. Now, let's get back into the podcast.
Talk to me a little bit about some of your philosophies, because as you can tell, I can talk about that stuff all day. But I'm always interested in other people's perspectives, because how does your mindset work? How do you go about it?
Obsessively.
Yeah.
In every way. And I say that because I spent my life trying really hard. You know, like I said, I wasn't the best at school. I was in a city that I was really trying to like make a name for myself. And it felt like I was just trying really hard. And I was like getting really close. But when it came to the marketing, all it took was the step away of everything else. And then I didn't have to try. So this kind of segues into.
Do you think it was inherent to you?
Yeah, it kind of, because it's like what I was, and I'm not saying that I'm just inherently like the best marketer. It was the systems, the strategy, the layout, the aesthetic, the visual. Like it almost was just like I didn't realize that what I had been doing to build a music career was literally brand building, customer service. Like it was all of these things into one. And the thing I always tell people is like, when I realized that I had been selling, my creations from my heart to people that did not give any care about me or anything in my life, but when I realized that I could get millions of people to digest that, I'm like, oh, give me a brand that is established that just needs some help.
Mm-hmm.
Like give me a project to be able to get something that's already benefiting people that they don't need to even like give me that. And then that's kind of when I started seeing the results, and I was like, okay, I can really help out small businesses. Like I can really help some people out.
Yeah.
This,
Was there a point that you can think of where you said, you know what, this is the person, this is the situation, or something that made you say, okay, I have to take this and go over there? Because it doesn't sound like you walked away from music.
Yeah.
It sounds like you capitalized on it and brought it into this new
100%.
thing.
I'm really glad that you use that terminology, because I wouldn't even have looked at it like that. But I always have been doing the marketing. I think that's something I like to add to, of like when it comes into it being like Playbook Creative Agency. That was about a year ago, like when it switched into being a full-on like full-service creative agency where we were going to be working with other freelancers to then kind of tell these stories for all these brands and stuff. But you had asked about philosophies, and I actually realized I didn't even give you any. There's a book by Tyrese that I read called How to Get Out of Your Own Way.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're familiar with that one.
Yeah, of course.
That is something really, really sticks really a ton with me. That is essentially what had to happen, because it's like that book, The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield, and then Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday. So
wow,
if you know those.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So, and
I'm
you're
impressed.
a marketer. So yeah. And see, now I could talk about the mentors that put me onto these things, because that is, again, part of the reason why I'm even here. But a lot of it was me not being afraid. Something I recently was telling one of my friends. One of my friends has been trying to find like their career, because they're kind of wanting to start over, but not by choice, right? And
yeah. It's either by design or by default.
Exactly. Right? And I always tell this story of the time, like they always are asking me like, man, you've been grinding. Like I've seen you, like, how did it work? And I'm like, yeah, well, no one saw when I was in LA, getting petitions signed for $6 a signature. And then I get recognized by one of my literal idols that I was in the studio with the night before. They roll their window down at the stoplight and they're like, Max, what did that do to my heart? I'm sitting here getting signatures for some company I found on Craigslist that is paying me $6 per signature and then taking 30% of that. So it's like at the end of the day, I'm like, okay, cool, made $13. I can get on the train back to Long Beach and I can get some.
You just got yourself a ticket.
Literally, right?
Wow.
And I think that kind of concept was when I started to, again, going back to getting out of my own way. I was like, okay, music, because when I moved back to Fort Wayne, and we didn't really talk about me coming back, but when I moved back, my first thing was I was recruited by Sweetwater. So I went to Sweetwater.
I saw that on your bio, yeah.
But then I learned that I didn't want to work full time. Like I had no intention of working full time. I just kind of was like, yeah, let me see what's up with it. I haven't worked a 9-to-5 type of job in a long time. That was like the first time I wasn't freelance for like full time anymore. So that kind of gave me a little bit of time to like not obsess over music because music was giving me like it was paying my bills. It was everything. It's like I felt like if I didn't wake up and make a new song, whether it was like writing a new song and then pitching it or putting it out, then I felt like I wasn't doing my due diligence because I was already blessed enough to be making like passive income off of the music. So I felt like I had to keep making more, but it was very stressful, especially when it is your heart and
it is.
It's independent and. So I feel like I'm dragging it out, but it really no. I was doing it already. And then a couple things like kind of happened in my head where I was just like, let me see if other people want me to do it for them. And that's just when I really just put my head down and decided to just try it. And then that's when I was kind of blessed with like the crossover and like interference of clients that valued what I was presenting to them. And then with that just kind of came the knowledge of learning how to present better, learning how to do better customer service and manage client relationships, how to actually like prove results and stuff like that. I just kind of segued into that.
I think you're right. I think it's again, a lot of the show isn't just what people did, but what the obstacles were. And I gotta tell you, do you know who James Caan is?
Yes.
Okay, so
restaurants.
Yeah, so he's been a guest on the show. He's a good friend of NEI.
Yeah,
and he won our second annual Pioneer of the Year.
I saw that. Yeah,
and awesome. He's just a wonderful person. Bringing him up is mainly because what James did is he talked on this show. He talked about failing college, struggles in life, dad gone. Going to school, flunking out, basically. I mean, it's kind of an intentional fail out, but,
right.
However you want to call it. But that's what built him. And as you're talking about the books that you've read and everything, and talking about how you probably didn't apply yourself as much in school, it's very interesting to me because that's the snake path that we all take. There's got to be a hard pivot. There's got to be a hard left turn, a hard right turn. A lot of it just comes from, I think it's passion, it's perseverance. And I think that the way you choose is the way I would say it. The way you choose to come out the other side is what makes you.
It is.
And I think that, like I said, a lot of it comes from that passion and perseverance. And I don't think it's very difficult to recognize it at the time. I don't know if you would be happier now if you were doing music full time, or if that was the gateway and the stepping stone to where you are now. What do you think about that?
Oh, it's the latter.
Aside from your attitude, what do you think the unique selling proposition is? What makes Playbook special?
The name Playbook quite literally has what makes it special. And I as weird as it sounds, I didn't even do that on purpose. So like a playbook is like the rubric, right? Like that's the rubric, the strategy, what's going to win. Did not do that on purpose. This all started because me and my brother actually were in LA, and this was during part of the time when we this was before COVID, probably 2018 maybe. And we had just both quit our jobs, and because like when we were in LA, it's like we were able to do certain like freelance things or certain odd jobs and stuff like that just to make ends meet. And I remember there was a time where our whole house, we were all musicians, all quit our job, and we're like, okay, what can we do? And then that's kind of when
a house full of broke musicians.
Exactly, right? And we all had platforms too ourselves. So like it was on a very minuscule level, but we kind of just came up with the name Playbook because we were literally helping like other like small, like I'm talking like we were doing like $10 promotions for like Instagram promotions, for like 100 different artists, like really small things.
You're hustling.
Exactly. And then that's kind of where the name came from, was like the Playbook, right? And then as I create my company and I start working with different companies, and it's like we have some bigger clients that aren't quite corporate, but it's still small business owned. And I think a lot of it was because I will go into these meetings with clients or even potential clients, and I am not going to be doing anything that they could not do themselves. And I make it very clear. But what I'm selling is the fact that they now get to focus on what's already working. Because if you go look at some of these smaller places, like they may every single day of a week they may be posting avidly, right? But then the next week, let's say the water line breaks and they haven't posted in a month because they're
right.
And it's like, I'm not sitting here trying to
calendar.
Yeah, right. And what I like about that too is that there's been so many times where I've talked to people wanting to get into this industry too. They'll hit me up and they'll say, "Hey, can I come like intern for you?" Or, "Hey, do you need help?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I do need help." And then I'll be like, "Make this content calendar, help me with the strategy." And they're like, "Oh my goodness, I hate social media." And I don't hate social media. I love social media. I'm kind of obsessed with social media. So
it's necessary.
Exactly.
It is now.
It is.
It's the way it goes.
Jumping in here to shout out one of our podcast sponsors, Sweetwater. Now, just for some reference, without Sweetwater, our podcast would sound something like this. It would also look something like this. Enough of that. Sweetwater is the nation's largest destination for music gear, as well as your one-stop shop for all things podcasting. We personally worked with them to fill out this studio, and I can say from experience, they are the friendliest team to be working with. You can receive personalized gear advice as well as technical support to get your gear up and running. We honestly cannot recommend them enough. So if you're a music person, a content creator, a podcaster, etc., make sure to check them out in the description below.
And it's funny because the way you're talking about it, my next question was going to be, what's the ultimate goal of Playbook?
Mm-hmm.
And seeing you on paper, I would have thought you would have answered, I want 70 offices and blah, blah, blah. Now that I'm talking to you, I feel like you're more niche, that you're looking at this as, whatever. I don't know exactly what about it inspires you,
Mm-hmm.
but what would you say, what would make you say, yeah, I made it?
I've been actually doing a different like documentary type of series for an additional YouTube channel that I made recently, and this is a topic that I was talking about, is like, what is success to you or to anybody, right? Because that is one of the most subjective feelings that we can have in terms of our work. When I was living in LA, one of my dearest friends, was extremely successful in the music industry and was doing every single thing that all of us could never imagine doing, right? But this was our best friend. We lived in a home with him. Like, this was our main guy. And we would always have these really deep conversations because I was kind of more like a vagabond where, like, I would have $100 in my account and he'd be like, dude, how have you been eating out every single day for the past month? And I'm like, I honestly don't know, but the universe, it works, right? Like, because every day is our last one. So I was that guy and I was always happy. I had been through all these things. Now here is my best friend, can buy anything in the world. Also comes from nothing, but like can buy anything in the world, has experienced all these forms of success. One of the most broken and hurt people I've ever had in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't understand why. Like, it almost felt like it was like, not that he was taking offense of it, but it was a hard conversation that we would have very, very often. We would always wake up early and we would like have these either early or like super late at night. And I didn't have an answer because he would see me grinding every single day just to get, this much views, where he would put something out, immediately it's 1 million, immediately it's 10 million, right? And it wasn't hitting, right? So those conversations kind of molded success being into something that only exists in here, because I could talk about music and I could talk about the first check that I got off of music. It was like probably $50. And I remember I needed it to get to the show that I had that weekend. Like, and then it ended up not being enough because I got food like on the way. So it wasn't even like enough money, but I thought that was like a bad thing. And then I came across something that was saying how, I don't know, there's like 100,000 songs. This like changed my life. There's like 100,000 songs put out every single day. And all these things saying, and then it pretty much said that like, if you have ever filled up your gas tank from something you love doing, you're ahead of 99% of society.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, the first time I ever got paid for my music, filled up my gas tank. And that perspective right there, now, it's not like I was making a ton of money, but kind of that perspective made me realize that, wow, I'm in LA. I am about 100 times past where 13-year-old Max would have been like, you made it, dude. And I'm like, and I'm broke as ever. I don't have anything that I thought I would have. So I didn't make anything. So then that's when I started to have to like really focus on like what's in here and what's in here.
Yeah,
and
I
then,
like that. Well, because you're not. So you're telling me that you've never even thought about measuring your success as a destination or a goal. It's success comes from within. It sounds like that's what you're saying.
Yeah, and I mean, I go back to where I had one of my mentors brought this up to me. Like they made me realize that I would always tell people that when I was making music, right? I would always tell them that I didn't want to be Lil Wayne. I didn't want to be Drake. I don't want to be in the limelight. And people here, in Indiana would look at me and they'd be like, oh, but Max, you're so talented. Like, what? Don't you want to be Michael Jackson? Don't you want to? And I was like, and then I started to be like, yeah, I guess, yeah, I do, right? But no, I never wanted that, right? So that, I think once I realized being okay with literally just wanting to have a good head on my shoulders was when I was like, okay, success can't be measured by these outside things. Like, these people don't care. I don't care what people are seeing like about me, or I don't care. I just want to be able to live my life. And I have a 3-year-old daughter too. I haven't even been able to get into that, but like I have a family now. So like if I'm putting food on the table, if she's happy, if she wants to give me a hug when I see her, that is me being successful, and having the time to be able to do so, I guess, and being able to own my time. I think that's I know I went into a tangent before, but that's kind of like the best way to say it is having ownership of my time, my energy. Like that is success. And I would say I've reached that. I'd like to maintain that, I guess.
So we're winding down in the show now. There's just one last question that I have for you before we get into a rapid fire. Is tell me a little bit about how Fort Wayne has helped you, Northeast Indiana, how being here, what does that mean to you, and how has it been supportive for your goals?
Yeah, that's a great question, because when I moved away, I never, ever wanted to move back. And it wasn't that I was like quietly not wanting to move back. I never was going to step foot in this place ever again. Because
we've heard that a lot.
I'm sure.
Now we're getting this momentum, but yeah, it wasn't always there.
Right. And I think I was watching the interview that you guys did with one of the content creators, Julia. They were saying how we have unique things that people like out there don't have, that we don't think about, like cornfields and stuff like that.
There's a misperception of us, for sure.
There is, and
sure.
and like that, it gives just with the internet, everything exists more online anyway. And I feel like this is a very unique place as far as what's happening. And I guess I say that just because there's so much here. I ended up moving back because I had a daughter, and I wanted my family to be able to be close. I wanted to raise my daughter like close to my family. And again, I dreaded it so much, but then when I got back, that's when I noticed that like there's a development happening that's not just like a random development. It's like, no, there's things happening here.
Yeah.
And I want to be a part of it. And I could not be more grateful to be back.
And with all the great things happening here, I think sometimes you have to go away to find your way home.
You do.
And I think that with us, it's made my life a lot easier, because we've got so much wind in our sails around here now that it makes, obviously with my gig, I got to promote that, and it's working. Mm-hmm. So we're going to get into rapid wrap up now.
Yeah.
And you've seen the show, obviously, and that's how you know us. So, okay, your favorite music artist?
Prince.
Really?
I'm going to say it because you're also from Minneapolis, and
yeah.
I've been listening to
him
a lot
we're going to have
lately.
some stories to talk.
Yep.
Okay, and who would be a dream client for you?
I guess like just anyone who also is in ownership of their company that is on a ginormous scale to where I'm able to really help them like really push things to the next level. So I don't know, just someone extremely successful. I don't have a dream client. I just want to help people.
Okay, that's fair. And then what is the favorite component of your job? So is it the ideation, the creation, the execution? Where do you think you prove the most value?
I would say at the beginning, I would say the creation, because I was learning when I jumped into the agency. I had been doing all the multimedia type of stuff and creation, but it really made me hone in on my video composition, my photo, like learning kind of like the back end of the technicalities of a different medium, because I've been so focused on music. So that was at the beginning, that was something I really was proud of, but it's the results now, because now it's like I was saying it before, it's like I literally have witnessed with experiencing the numbers of places that had no idea what to do, and then I was at the right place at the right time and was able to help them out. So
that's awesome. We're out of time, Maxwell. I got to tell you, it's an honor to meet you, and I just love the attitude. And like I said, if anything else, you should really look into having your own radio show too, or something. I think
that might be in the works, though. Something like
okay, all right. I wouldn't doubt it with you. But it's been an honor to meet you,
as well.
and I wish you nothing but continued success.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
To round out the show, don't forget to find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and of course at PioneerStartsHere.com. So thanks again, Max, and thanks again, everybody, for tuning in.